so I
You're in some of these.
So the only time I see you is in not in my class, but in junior seminars you're in attendance.
There's a reason.
Hey.
Oh.
Good. We'll watch these, is that okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Who's presenting today? These three ladies?
No, these two plus Luke and Boot. So
It'll be good.
Are you going? Excited? Donna, you ready? This
Yes.
looks good. I love the bright
Yes.
colors.
Okay.
I'm doing alright. Yeah.
I wish I was like you.
You got all of them. It's got the whole circus. I was trying to ask them questions and they just walked past. No,
It's like designated lanes for those questions.
He's probably just gonna tell me about how my pirates are.
No one cares. This is good. I don't care.
I'm supposed to what?
You got really assignment, my friend.
Why you have questions? You want to So your question is, should you take it?
Yeah, okay.
Unless you're still learning.
Unless you're super
You are good. Because that was like so you're good. So it's great.
You're expecting, you highly recommend I have a huge Thursday ahead of you, so.
Where?
No, in front of you.
That whole country.
In front of you.
Oh, I was
so excited for it.
here.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with it, and
How much have you guys worked together last night? Is that
no,
what you meant?
wrong. And what I'm saying is that I'm pacing myself.
Oh, so you're waiting to do all the work
No,
at the same time?
no,
So you dilute it to
no,
mediocrity at best?
not, it's good.
See, if I said that, you guys would be annoyed. You're so mean, you're the meanest teacher.
Okay, here, we'll do attendance now. Who are we missing?
Bishop?
Sorry?
Bishop?
Okay.
Let's do it.
I for sure. Junior attendance. Okay, so is that right? Can we confirm only Bishop?
Yep, one Bishop.
All present. Except Bishop. 2 minutes and then we'll start. Okay?
Yeah. Just run through.
Wait, you ran. Oh, ran. I thought you said you ran at some. You, I was
running.
running laps. Oh, yeah. You guys should do more else.
I agree.
Are there any
It's like rock
Most of the time it's just a lecture, so. Yeah. No, it'll be more productive if we ran, no.
Plan. It's seeing good plans.
Alright, we're recording, so you ready to go?
Yeah.
Alright guys, remember, everyone's focused, give her the attention you all get and everyone deserves.
Guess I'll just throw it. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the value of art and its importance. And the reason why I chose this was because ever since I was a little girl, I always enjoyed creating. And these are just some of the examples of when I was little and I would draw. And since then, I just always, loved it. And I would be thrown into ceramics. And these are some of the pieces that I've made. So I knew for this project that this was something that I wanted to focus on. the second part of this was the impact it has on students. And for us, we have certain requirements and credits that we have to fulfill, and one of them is art. And I wondered why. Like, why should we take that? Another one being that preschoolers start off their morning doing art, and I wondered why should that happen, or what's the importance of it, or how it affects them psychologically. So that left me with my driving question, which was, how does art impact cognitive development in people? And the first part of this project is writing a research paper, and these are the 3 strands that I researched, and the first one being children's benefits from art, and I learned that they gain 3 main strengths, which I'll go in later, and a study of an art program and school performance, because I wanted to see if there was actually a correlation between the two, and art therapy, which was a real-world application of just not students, but also people with real conditions and how they use art. Oh, while they were all very important and interesting, the one that I wanted to focus on was children and art. And that's because they gain 3 main things, and that is critical thinking skills, decision-making skills, and self-discovery. Critical thinking being that they're internalizing, examining, and observing new information, seeing layered elements, the meanings in the painting, and the little details. They're becoming familiar with it, they're seeing different viewpoints and styles and ideas. Then they're reaching a conclusion on their own on how they feel about the art piece, and then for themselves, whether they really like it or they don't. They're making artistic choices, seeing what skills they want to incorporate, what materials and styles. Then they're having a sense of creative control because they're creating something from their own imagination and ideas. And then giving them a sense of accomplishment because they created something from their own choosing, and they're able to express themselves through this outlet. Last one being self-discovery, because they're giving the opportunity to discuss and engage in art. Then they're able to see if they really like it or they don't, how they see certain styles and art pieces. Then with creating art, they're finding their own style and their own taste, and their own uniqueness in this art world. So I wanted to see if I could apply these 3 things within my own internship, and that was film photography. And I knew that I wanted to do it because I started shooting with these little cameras, and it was something that I really loved. So, and then when I got gifted this one, I knew it was something that I wanted to do for this project. And then I knew exactly who to work with, and that was with Wendy Laurel, and she'd honestly been someone that I've always wanted to work with. And I admired her work, and so I chose her for this project. And these are the types of pictures that she takes, very bright, they're colorful in the moment and vibrant. And that's exactly the type of person that she is. And she would describe it as chasing her rainbows. And in her photos, you can obviously tell that she did. So with getting a camera, you take one of these and it's one simple click. But when you get an actual camera, you don't exactly know what all of these little settings mean. So then I had to first learn the basics. And that is exposure, which is the amount of light that is used in making the photo. And you can have a picture that's underexposed, which would be they would be too dark, or you couldn't really see what's going on. Or overexposed, where there's too much light and it's just a blank screen. ISO, which would be the film speed, and these are determined by the different weathers. And shutter speed, which she described as the blinking. Aperture, which would be the pupil, just like right here. And it opens up as wide as you want it. So the wider the aperture, the more light it lets in, the smaller, the less light. Then she taught me about my relationship with the sun, whether if I was in front of it, behind it, or beside it, and then following different composition rules. So all of these impact the way that the photo looks and things that you have to think about prior to even taking a photo. So the one that I had issue with, and I didn't realize how important it was exposure. And I would started taking photos like these, very underexposed. You couldn't really see what's going on, or they would come out blurry. But that was because I was in an enclosed space, so the camera was having a harder time picking up the light. But then I ended up liking how the blurry ones came out because it almost felt like you were there, just very in the moment. But this was something that I had to fix and work on prior to taking the photo. And then the next part was actually following composition rules. The first one being background, which was that she always emphasized how important it was to always have a clean background, to be intentional with what you incorporate within the photo. And The next one was following the rule of thirds, which is this grid. And for this example being the butterfly, it has to be on those two lines or in the intersection. And then she always said to keep an eye out for anything that was repeating or patterns. The next part is incorporating layers within your photo. So in this case, adding flowers just to add depth or color. Then she always encouraged me to take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, or 3 steps to the side, shoot down or shoot up to get different perspectives, and then to incorporate color within your photos. And the cool thing about this one is that it's a double exposure, so it was taking 2 photos and it mashed it up into one. So all of these together enhance the way that the photo looks, and they're very crucial with photography. Another point or something that I took away from her that was really important for me was the concept of access. And she said I had access to kids my age doing kids my age things, where I could take out my camera and take a picture of the moment and it wouldn't be weird. And she described it as if she was in that instance, she couldn't because they would stop or they would think it's weird or they would feel uncomfortable. So I was able to get moments like these where they're very raw and they're genuine. And that was something that I always thought about when I was out. So this was like one of the biggest pieces of advice that I took with me. Then I wanted to see if I could apply those 3 things into my own internship, and I did. I built my critical thinking skills because I saw new information, I became familiar with it, and I reached a conclusion on my own on how to achieve it. Then I made artistic choices, seeing what film I wanted to use, what settings. Then I felt accomplished because I was able to do it independently. And then I had opportunities to see different photographers and her own style, and then see if I liked it for myself and wanted to incorporate it within my own film. And then I grew confidence within the camera because I knew exactly what settings to choose, and I wasn't being, just blindly picking, but I knew what to do. So it was interesting to see that these 3 things applied within the film world. So what I would hope to do and what I want to do is see the business side of this, because I saw exactly how to take pictures, but now the actual business side. So that would be selling prints or taking senior photos or just, really see into that side. And I hope this has inspired you in any way to take more photos of the moments that you have access to. Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Leah, and for my presentation, I did the impact adverse childhood experiences can have on the mental health of children. The reason why I chose this topic is because I've always been interested in psychology, and as my future career goal is to become a psychologist, I wanted to use the opportunity of this project to further understand why someone may seek therapy and how I could possibly help someone going through hard times, especially those of a young age, as they lack the life experiences that could potentially make dealing with mental health issues more difficult. While keeping these things in mind, I was able to formulate my driving question, which is, what are the key factors that may impact mental health, and how can therapy properly assist a child through those situations in order to prevent the possibility of issues resurfacing during adulthood? From there, I decided on my 3 strands and chose from topics that I knew are common issues that children may face and are out of their control, which is bullying, poverty, and negative parental influence. These 3 topics are very different from each other, but it is important to understand how they each negatively affect mental health. Bullying, as it is a negative interaction with no positive outcome. Poverty, as it can make someone feel like an outcast or unlucky compared to the people around them. And lastly, negative parental influence, as it means to live around someone who can be toxic or mistreat their child in a way that keeps their child from being in a good mood. And out of my 3 strands, there's one common result: low self-esteem. After figuring this out, it gave me an idea of how it could involve an internship with my project. But first, I needed to understand what low self-esteem really is. And by definition, it means to think about yourself in a negative way or judge yourself negatively. Low self-esteem issues impact people in different ways, but the reason why it is important to pay attention to children if they were to experience this is as they are young, they have a higher chance of it developing as they grow older, which causes the likelihood of more severe disorders when they're an adult. And when mental disorders are found to be more severe, the higher the chance of it impacting someone's life. There's a higher chance of it impacting someone's life in ways of loss. For example, loss of financial stability, loss of a job, or even loss of people closest to them. When a child experiences low self-esteem issues, they tend to have a change in behavior, either becoming less social or degrading to those around them, all in which depends on how well the child can handle their emotional state. Which brings me to the topic of my internship. Overall, I knew that Originally, I knew that if I wanted to have an internship, it'd look a lot different than what I normally expect, as therapy sessions are meant to be kept confidential, rather than finding someone who I could potentially sit through a session with and taking notes on the interactions between a therapist and the patient. For me to respect the privacy of a session, I knew that I needed to find someone who I could have a conversation-based experience with. And that's when I thought of Dr. Rouser, a psychologist who I did an academic evaluation with a couple of years ago, and who I knew had a doctorate in clinical psychology. And as I was already comfortable with him, I found it easier for me to keep conversations going in relation to psychology in the project that further expanded my curiosity of what it meant to be a psychologist. And that's where he taught me the terms of how often that are often used in the psychological field, his experiences of working with neurodivergent children, what he gained from it, meaning people who may struggle with issues such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, etc. And lastly, he taught me how to work through certain mental health issues, which leads me back to the topic of low self-esteem in relation to what Dr. Rouser taught me, which is working through low self-esteem issues with children. In order to help someone through this issue, there are three main steps that are significant to solving the problem: evidence, reflection, and resilience. First, get the child to prove their issue. The more you can get a child to talk about what they're experiencing, the easier it becomes for a therapist to pinpoint the severity of what the patient is going through. And throughout this conversation, it is important to acknowledge internal versus external events, which means to understand characteristics versus blaming situations. As a patient deals with low self-esteem issues, whether it is a child or an adult, it can be hard for them to identify how blaming their situations can result in low self-esteem, and it's important to clarify when a patient is doing it so they can identify when it's happening in the future. From there, the process becomes a lot easier by helping them reflect and identifying their issue, then teaching them how to apply resilience factors into their everyday lives, which should all result in a more positive mindset that could get rid of low self-esteem issues for that person, which is the answer to my driving question. The biggest takeaway from this project is the benefits I gained through my internship. Not only do I now have a better understanding of a possible career path, but I also know how to apply what I learned from Dr. Rouser to help myself if I were to ever need it. For the future, I hope to do a project in relation to psychology to expand my knowledge, but as of right now, I'm not too sure of what I'd want to focus on. Thank you.
Luca.
Okay, my name is Luca Boot, and my project is on careers in technology. I wanted to talk about this topic because I'm interested in going to school, to college for a technology field, and I'm inspired by my family members who have had success in the field. So I wanted to talk not just about the job, but I'm more interested in the lifestyle of the worker. I wanted to know the aspects of the day-to-day, and that's what I based my project about. I wanted to know this because many places you research, they'll just tell you about the job, but you don't really get the personal aspect about how the worker, how their life is affected. So to figure this out, I decided to do my project with interviews with 3 successful people that I know. The people who I interviewed is my Uncle Jeff, who is a cybersecurity manager at Netflix, my Aunt Carrie, cybersecurity researcher at Citibank, and good family friend John Yonan, who is a manager of IT at Intel. So first person I interviewed was my Uncle John. And the big 3 pros that I found are he gets lots of work from home opportunities. He gets aside a lot of his own hours, and of course he makes a lot of money. And there's a lot of cons. An interesting thing I found as we look at the cons here is that when you work your own hours, you end up doing more work than someone who is on a timed shift. Instead of working a 9 to 5, he might end up working at 8 to 10 or something along those lines. Another con about having such a high-ranking role in the company is that he is roped into many meetings that he's not necessarily important for his job or does not require his input. Being the manager for the security team, many people depend on him, whether it be the cybersecurity team needing his help with a complex issue or executives pressuring him to rush new features. Example of this is the new games that you might have noticed on some Netflix apps that the executives pressured the cybersecurity team and all the rest of the teams at Netflix to get out only in a matter of weeks. So there's constant hurdles every day that require them to learn constantly new solutions and new problems to overcome. Next person I interviewed was my Aunt Carrie. She works in cybersecurity at Citibank. Her job consists of researching new cybersecurity developments and providing a second opinion for her team members. Cybersecurity for a bank is more intense, as breaches in a bank can mean leaked personal information of account holders and potential money lost from the bank. Some pros of her job are that she gets to read news articles and provide insight for her coworkers. And what I mean by this is that she told me her job is basically to just walk around the team of her coworkers and just look at what they're doing and just give suggestions. So all she really does is walk around, read news articles, and just provides a second opinion, which, because she has so much experience, is an important job. And you guessed it, she makes a lot of money. Some cons are, like the last job, the 2 big cons are the constant evolution of the job, constant new problems coming in, and the requirement of constant learning about new threats, new things that come on, new attackers that they need to overcome hurdles to get over. Example of this is she told me during the interview that For their executive customers, they have AI voice recognition to get into their bank accounts. And now with AI technology, people can recreate the voice of a account holder, and they're hard at work just trying to this and that and that. It's just more problems coming every day, more things you need to learn. Finally, the third person I interviewed was John Yonan. He works as an information technology manager at Intel. He hires, manages, and sometimes fires teams of people within the company. This was a more interesting interview because he had the experience of his own with the job and the insight of what it takes to get hired at one of these companies. Some pros of this job is that he's able to direct teams of workers he creates and able to organize his workspace to his liking. Another pro is that when he needs someone to fill in a spot where there's missing skills or he needs extra help for a specific team, he has a long list of candidates who apply for the job that he can pick that can fit right into where he needs them and make a lot of money. Cons of this job are there's many people in the company that depend on you. He's the link between Intel and the teams, and without his direction, his teams would be lost. This means that whatever he's doing in the day, he always needs to be available on the phone or ready to fix any problems that arise in his absence. So some universal pros and cons that I realized I derived from all of these are some trends I noticed. Are for pros, I noticed that all of them were passionate about the job, and no matter the long hours, they were happy about what they were doing. They did not care. I also noticed that the companies that they worked for were very lenient and offered many work from home programs and extensive vacation time, in part, I believe, because of the long hours they work. Another thing I noticed is that their jobs are secure in the companies that work for, and the companies would have a hard time finding replacements because of their unique skill sets and the people that depend on their job. Technology companies are very competitive when it comes to hiring skilled workers. Many scout and send offers to employees of other companies to offer them more money to work for them. Another example of this would be my godfather, Charles, who I didn't get to interview. He worked in industrial design at Apple, designing iMacs or MacBooks or whatever it may be. And he got an offer from the video game company Unity, which many of you may know, who were willing to pay him more money than Apple did for his expertise. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of job security. Once you get that experience, you're high up in this company. Companies fight over you. And of course, it makes a lot of money. Some universal cons I found are that technology, the field is always constantly changing. With these jobs, they have to be on guard at all times, always evolving their skill sets with the evolution of the industry. So my conclusion that I found is that if you are interested in a job in technology, it should be known that these jobs require dedication for the craft, as evidenced by the long hours they work and the constant work not imposing on their solid mental state of the interviewees. They work not just for the money, but for the devotion and passion of the work. And that's where I think it's really true factor in having a successful career. Thank you.